and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guest today has worked something of a marvel by turning friends to rivals and back to friends, all for our entertainment. He cooks up art for the eyes, ears and taste buds while keeping us informed as to what's happening in the district. Never idle. Unless embodying their role as a champion, they are always keen to help us weather the storm as new DMs. Like Virgil to our Dante. He is wise, a guide, and a survivor in his own. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome TTRPG player, dungeon master, Twitch streamer, and socially unconventional art cultivator of Waterdeep and beyond, Brian Gray. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hello, it's wonderful to be here. I am overwhelmed and embarrassed by that introduction. That was wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. Well, many of the things I've alluded to there in the introduction we'll get to later in our interview in the chat. But Brian, how did you get into tabletop role-playing games, please?
I have been playing tabletop role-playing games since the 80s. I started with Dungeons & Dragons, and that was around the time that there was a lot of hubbub about the content in the game and worrying about it affecting young minds. But we had a small group of players. We were late elementary school at that point, and I was awful at it. It was fun to play in terms of fantasy, but I couldn't manage the math at all. And I tried my hand once at being a dungeon master, and I did not do well with it. And eventually I just kind of fell out with the hobby. Not fell out with the hobby, but I kind of fell out of practice, and trying to pick it up over the years, tables weren't as supportive and welcoming. So aside from then in the 80s, I think I stopped playing for quite a few decades until picking it back up again recently.
Where in the intermediate in the middle time, the middle space, what was your focus between sort of when you sort of not stepped away but allowed the game to sort of fall away from you a little bit, and then picking it back up in a more sort of recent time frame?
There was more of a focus on my other kind of nerdy or geeky hobbies. I've always loved science fiction. I've always loved comic books and video games, and I feel like more of my time was spent on that. And I'm Generation X, so the internet really started to be a thing as we were getting older, and I ended up really kind of turning to the World Wide Web and this online world of sharing just everything and discovering things. And I feel like a lot of my hobbies and focus turned to meeting others for just other kinds of hobbies. Tabletop role playing just wasn't a huge part of it initially.
Okay. So when you did start to pick it back up, when did content creation and sort of Twitch streaming and all those sort of things really start to tie in together?
That's interesting, because I had played in the intervening years, I had played once or twice with other systems and didn't really stick with them for long. I did live action role playing very briefly, and a D20 system very briefly. But Twitch was something that my friend Tanya DePass had mentioned. Hey, I do this thing where I stream playing my video games online, and it seems like something that maybe you would enjoy. And I've always sort of, via my blog and other means, always sort of put my content online, just because I was fascinated by all the things you can do online and all the ways you share information online and content. So I tried it, and it was a lot of fun. Basically, to be able to slot out time to play video games. And I don't consider myself a major pundit or critic or anything like that, but it was just nice to be able to share my thoughts and what about games I found fun, and then to hear other people who watch and share theirs in chat. And I would say the majority of role-playing games and content creation sort of came together right around the start of the pandemic. And most people were inside, and people who had gone, my friends who had gone and met up with their gaming groups in person, were doing it all virtually. And I think a lot of our eyes sort of opened to the idea, I suppose our minds opened to the idea that, well, maybe we can start some virtual groups. And I'm sure people were already doing that. I'm certain. But we ended up creating a show. Tanya created it, and we were all playing Animal Crossing at the time. and she had been on Gary Whitta had a talk show that he hosts in Animal Crossing, and she was on and said, "Well, have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons?" And turns out he had not. So we ended up pulling together a show called Dungeon Crossing, where Tanya taught players, and I was a returning player to play Dungeons and Dragons, and we had a short adventure in while our characters were in Animal Crossing, and it was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
And we play, yeah, we played through a, I think it was a starter module with some light changes here and there, and after that, we schedules being what they are, schedules are the ultimate and final boss of any gaming group. We weren't able to really finish it. Yeah, it's so true. I know everybody out there
Yeah.
sympathizes. Like, how have you managed to? When I see people talk about their gaming groups, and oh, these friends have been playing D&D for 30 years together.
Hmm.
I cannot imagine how what a nightmare it is trying to get all their calendars together. But
Yeah.
after Dungeon Crossing, I had done some other one shots online, and I was really enjoying getting back into the hobby. It was really nice to come back to D&D and Fifth Edition when it was what I feel it has been the most accessible in years in terms of being able to welcome new players and focus on what you want to focus on, whether it's the storytelling, whether it's the fantasy element, whether really it is building your perfect build and putting all your numbers together and making something super effective. And I'd played in some one shots after Dungeon Crossing, and then Tanya, the Rivals of Waterdeep, two of their cast members, I believe, is it two, one or two. This is where my own memory comes in and serves against me. But
Okay.
they were casting for new members, and Tanya asked me if I
Right.
would be interested, and I absolutely said yes. But are you sure you don't want to ask anyone else? Because it was such an important show, and
Hmm.
I didn't want to be the one who joins the cast and messes it all up. But she had faith in me, and the cast was very welcoming, and I joined along with my friend Eugenio Vargas, and it really was for someone who had lightly gotten back into tabletop role playing games. It was really diving into the deep end, and I just had a blast. It really was amazing jumping into an established story with a wonderful cast. Who just made it fun to get back into D&D.
Yeah, I can imagine. And the show remains an important part of sort of the D&D and tabletop role-playing game community to this day and onwards. And your role within the show has changed during your time as part of the Rivals team, should we say. What's it been like making the transition from sort of player through to co-DM alongside your good friend Eugenio?
It was terrifying, I won't lie. Since Rivals of Waterdeep generally does change DMs every season, they rotate, and I had not had much interest in being a DM. I had said that up front. I said, well, I'm really still kind of getting back into the mode of playing and that mindset. And essentially, Eugenio was already an excellent DM and an excellent storyteller. So yeah, the idea came up, well, what if the two of you did it together? And it was still so much pressure. Being handed essentially control over these characters who have had so many adventures together. But I feel like because I had essentially a writing partner and a scene partner in terms
Mm,
of us being DMs, we definitely brought the same energy that we play with to us being a DM. Because as much as as much as Rivals is friends getting together and playing D&D, it's also a streamed show, and it is in itself a show. So part of it is you are performing, even if you're simply playing your character and going through things. And even as the DM, you're performing a little bit. And it was a
mm,
lot of fun. We had a great time. We wrote together. We collaborated on our plot ideas, and in real time, doing the equivalent of passing notes to each other back and forth. We had a private chat going so that
mm.
almost every other minute of things happening on screen, he and I were both looking in this document, and it was, I would say, it's the equivalent of being a newsreader, where you have someone in the studio in your ear feeding you
Mm.
maybe what you need to do next or say next. It was like that. We were feeding that back and forth to each other so that we could keep the adventure going, and it was nice having a bit of a hive mind so I didn't have to handle it all on my own.
Yeah, no, I will ask you a bit more, but so in case people are inspired and want to sort of follow you and Rivals on social media, where can we find your good self and everything that you're associated with, please?
Oh, well, right now you can find me everywhere as Urban Bohemian, except on TikTok because I couldn't get the handle and it's impossible to get one if somebody else has taken it.
Mm.
And if you want to find Rivals of Waterdeep, you can find them on Twitch at Rivals of Waterdeep and on Twitter at Rivals Waterdeep. But yeah, definitely stop by Sunday afternoons, 1 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Rivals of Waterdeep for that. And I'm currently in a few other shows. I'm doing a D&D 5e horror campaign on Thursdays called Godplane. I am currently, you mentioned Idle Champions. Idle Champions presents Hunger of the Far Realm is a show that they have where the creators of their champions bring their characters into the game and have an adventure, and that's run by B. Dave Walters. And I'm also in a Cyberpunk Red podcast, Cyberpunk Independence, that comes out on Thursdays. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I'm doing a lot, and I look forward to being able to take a small rest from it over winter. Like just a tiny bit of time off, just a little bit.
just a little bit of respite, a little bit of recharge the batteries almost. And you're involved in so much, and the Cyberpunk podcast is certainly one I'm going to check out for myself, having sort of picked that up relatively recently. So I'll definitely be sort of subscribing to that. But I will make sure all those links are in the description below this podcast. So please scroll down and support Brian, Rivals, and all the shows that were mentioned there. Although support is something that is key for Rivals. I've noticed on Twitter primarily that the team are running an Indiegogo for the support of Rivals. You mentioned it being like a show. So how is it important? How important is it to have that sort of that support, that fan base, and that community around the show and the creators that make it?
It's interesting because, I hadn't really, before joining the cast of Rivals, I had watched the show a lot. And, for me, it was getting to watch my friends do amazing things and put together this amazing world full of great storytelling. And having joined the cast, I do sort of realize it's one of those things where you maybe don't realize how important something might be until you're a part of it and you're on the other side. And it's it's become important to me because we are, the entire cast are people of color, which is something that you, at the time Rivals come out, you typically had not seen. And
Mm,
another facet of Rivals is the point of it was to show that anyone can play D&D. It had players at all different skill levels and levels of experience, from different creative backgrounds playing. So to be able to keep it going is wonderful. I mean, I was already, bowled over by the fact that when I joined the cast, it was sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, aka the
mm,
people who own D&D. So if I can go back and tell myself who played poorly in the 80s that one day you're going to be on a show sponsored by the company that writes all this, I would not have believed it.
mm,
But they have decided to change. They've decided to change how they're laying out their funding. So yes, to essentially, we're running the Indiegogo right now to be able to finish telling our story. Our characters started at level 5, and we're currently level 19. And at the end of every season, we level up, and we will be level 20. Not many actual play shows have characters that have essentially grown into level 20. They may do level
mm,
21 shots or epic adventures. So it's really important for us to be able to finish out the story. And it's also important for us to note that Rivals of Waterdeep doesn't happen without that financial support. It certainly can happen, and I don't want to say that you can't do a TTRPG actual play, you can't do a stream essentially without that financial support. Of course you can, but there is a level of production that people have gotten used to.
mm,
There's a level of essentially upkeep, maintaining our podcast and hosting, paying our cast and paying our crew. I
mm,
will say the number one thing that I love about being on Rivals is we do have a producer that essentially all we have to do is show up and be ready to play. Where when I do my own stream, I am all of the staff. I am the
yes.
on-screen talent and I am everyone behind the scenes. And the fact that Rivals currently has financial support allows us to all be able to focus on our jobs without worrying about, pushing all the buttons and levers while we're in progress. So that is essentially what our Indiegogo is asking for. We've laid out the budget of what it takes to produce a season of our show, and that's all we're asking for. We're essentially not asking to profit. We're not trying to make money off of this. We just want to finish the story, and we are being very open and honest about what it costs to put on TTRPGs, which is a discussion that a lot of people do not truly comprehend. I really think that they don't understand the cost of putting on a well-produced show, which is odd because we watch well-produced shows our entire lives on television. But it seems like that idea changes when you look at it and think, oh, that's just 6 people sitting on Zoom. That's nothing major. And I'm like, it's still pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. And I know that conversation has happened as part of the Vampire, the Masquerade streaming shows have raised
Yes.
the same thing. And I'm fully in support of supporting content creators and shows, and for the production value and the hard work that people put in, they do deserve to be compensated. And life certainly isn't cheap at the moment, so I certainly understand and support shows that have the structure and the infrastructure to be able to put on such amazing content for us to enjoy, primarily for free, to be fair.
I think that's the thing that we try to impress upon people, is that we're all used to getting great entertainment for free, but it's supported financially somehow. And most actual play shows do not run ads. They don't take breaks. They're not filling their time with sponsored content, and people are consuming that and hopefully enjoying it for free. And in our case, we have been able to secure that financial support without having that affect our viewers. It's just when that financial support ends, any production is going to have to look for alternate sources of income, and that's what we're doing now.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. And so we mentioned there that the cast, the party involved in Rivals, they're heading to level 20. Currently, the episode released at time of recording was on the 10th of November. Words, Wits, or Blades. So you can sort of go to the website and check that out. A link will be in the description below. But the adventure also continues in another medium that we've also mentioned, Idle Champions, and your character specifically being brought to life through the medium of the computer game. So what has that experience been like?
We're not speaking on video, but you cannot see, I just started smiling the minute you mentioned that, because as somebody who's played video games, they're, for as long as they've been available, it is just amazing to have all of my loves come together this way, to be able to create a D&D character for the show, then to have a company say, well, we're putting the characters from your show into a video game. And it's a video game that I put hundreds of hours into. It's really overwhelming and amazing. And I just today, when we're talking, was the first time that I actually unlocked the character in the game and played. And I had a stream this morning, and it just, like my friend said, you couldn't stop smiling, and it's true. I love the fact that Codename Entertainment has gone to look at actual play shows, and it's kind of a nice way that they're recognizing the impact of that entertainment. But they've gone and they said, well, these shows sort of align with what we're doing with this game, so we should approach those shows and work with their cast members to create their characters in game. And it's been really great to see. I'm just probably going to be, I said I'm going to be insufferable about it because I have a character in a video game. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, to really sell the point, if you wouldn't mind, for those that maybe aren't aware, would you mind giving us a little bit of insight about who Virgil is and why they are so special to you?
Sure. Virgil, I created Virgil as sort of a combination of all of my nerdy and geeky loves. Virgil is sort of comic book characters combined with like movie special effects and a lot of touches of my own personality. And Virgil is a storm sorcerer, which essentially innately a powerful magic user. So for me, it was drawing in inspiration from superheroes, mutants, and other powered characters. Virgil is a storm sorcerer, and that to me is sort of a cheeky nod to the fact that a lot of comic book characters would always seem to give their black characters electrical or weather based or lightning based powers. And I was like, well, let's just go ahead and see that to its nth degree. And I've also created Virgil as an Aasimar sorcerer, and that is a race in D&D that has a celestial angelic heritage, but it isn't it isn't a consistent thing throughout family lines. And for me, that was the, you know, still seeing Virgil as the other, which is, which sort of bringing myself, being a black person, being a queer person, that kind of element to the character. And also, after joining the Rivals, Virgil had been on his own, aside from his partner Kent. Joining the Rivals was sort of a way of saying, like, found family is the best family. So the fact that this, and I think the other thing that I really like about Virgil, because I had to create him at such a, to me, high level, was that he's just casually, like any D&D character at, once you start to hit 14, 15, is just casually powerful. They're, it's like, yes, you have access to all of this magic, or you have access to all of this fighting ability, your connection with divinity, depending on where what your class is. And yet you still sit down and, your characters still go to taverns, they still go out and do things. And I said, well, yes, our characters have amazing amounts of power inside them, but we're still just doing normal things. Like, we don't sit around saying, oh, woe is me to be sitting here and having access to control all of the elements, and I just don't have time to help you find your lost puppy. Like, of course not. We're going to find that lost puppy. Of course we are. Like,
well, so going out and finding lost puppies, Virgil in the game, and I'm sure as part of the lore, has their own familiar, going from puppy to familiar of a baby lunar dragon. Tying all these elements together. Did you unlock that as well? Does that come as a bundle, or is that something you're going to have to work on as well?
In the game, you can. So in the TTRPG actual play, Idle Champions Presents, that is where they sort of feature our characters. Eugenio Vargas's Kent and mine were recently added to the game, and this time the theme was Spelljammer and Far Realm. And we eventually created Spelljammer outfits, and those had our familiars. So each of the characters got a familiar. Virgil got a baby lunar dragon, and Kent got a baby solar dragon, and the other characters got familiars. And those are available now. You can purchase those as skins in the game. And that's just kind of fun. Now I'm basically having fun dressing out my character in different skins and having my familiars on the field. I also created a familiar prior to this for the game, which is a baby moonstone dragon named Disco. So I've had that in the game as well. So essentially, I feel like I want to just get all the dragons that they have as familiars in the game and use them and have them all on the field at once. It's just fun and cute. It really is.
Yeah, 100%. So we've sort of spoken about what's sort of next for Rivals of Waterdeep and things like that. But what about you? Where are you going? At time of recording, I'll caveat that with that. What's next on the agenda for your good self?
As I mentioned, sleep, I hope. But let's see. Coming up soon, I'm trying to remember. I always get the dates wrong, but PAX Unplugged is coming up soon, which is a large tabletop gaming convention here on the East Coast. And that I'll be doing some shows there. And after that, as we mentioned, I believe that after that for the winter, I'm probably going to take a little bit of a break, simply because September, October, November has been a big time. I had a birthday in September and then took that month off, and then October, November has been packed. And I would like to just get back to enjoying streaming a little bit more. I want to try, I want to work on improving my at-home setup. I would love to do more cooking streams, more food and drink. I'll definitely be doing charity work. I love doing charity streams. And I'm really kind of hoping that what I miss is, if you've like seen online, seen my Twitter account, what I miss is kind of enjoying the city again. I'm looking forward to that, doing so safely and comfortably.
Mm.
So that's probably what's going to be happening for me over like winter 2023, 2022, 2023. I just want to kind of get out and about and get out a little bit more and not take a break necessarily from streaming, but doing essentially 4 shows a week while also having a day job and doing my own streams. That's a lot going on in one week, and it'll be
Mm.
nice to take just a little bit of time off. And then beyond that, I want to once again, I want to start finding shows that maybe, seeking new cast. I want to see if people want to help showcase their games, and sometimes they do that by doing, actual play one shots. I
Mm.
am currently working on. I'm currently part of the team working on the End of the Motherlands setting and game book, and
Ah,
um, that will be
yes.
out. So I may also look to see if anybody else would like me to work with them on their project. I'm mostly doing like editing, proofreading. I don't write. If you see my blog, I do write, but I don't like write like that yet.
Mm.
I don't have confidence enough in my writing for that. But I think I want to. I'm so happy that tabletop role playing games, not just D&D, but all different kinds of systems, genres, settings, cultures, etc., has seen such a renaissance that I kind of want to do that for as long as I can have fun. And right now, virtually with friends is the way I do it. I used to have a gaming group here in DC, but as I said, schedules sort of destroyed that.
Mm.
So yeah, I just want to keep playing games, and I want to keep sharing that with others, and keep streaming and keep sharing that with folks online.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to Into the Motherlands. Having spoken with B. Dave and Tanya, and your good self as well, being involved with it, and the process it's going through with that coming out, that's going to be great. There's, as you mentioned, there's Coyote and Crow is in another great
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. I was
setting
like,
game.
yes. Um,
And there are so many other games that are, as you say, opening out to and being respectful of the cultures in which they are representing.
yes.
It seems to be such a, as you say, such a good time for communities and tabletop role playing game to really expand it. Is there any more or anything else you would like to see happening in the sort of the tabletop role playing community, as it were, to help support content creators of color and people of color and just everybody, inclusivity for everybody, really.
I think the most important thing is honestly, the most important thing you can do to support is to invest in the projects that people are doing. For some people, that means buying a copy of their gaming book. Um, Others, non-financially, watching their show, telling other people about it. But I feel like kind of seeing things become more inclusive and more diverse. And I know some people see that as a kind of a danger word, but honestly, the most important thing about games, whether tabletop, video, etc., is that they are for everyone to play
Mm.
and everyone to enjoy. And I feel like that is the most important thing. And when we talk about games that are are essentially speaking to specific cultures, you're meeting those people where they live. You're not telling somebody, "Oh, you have to basically start playing a game that is drawn from fantasy that people kind of based in like a Eurocentric medieval vision." You're
Mm.
saying, "No, this game is about you and your culture's mythology. And it's, essentially these are the things that are already accessible to you." And if that translates to more actual plays, then of with people of color, with people from different cultures, basically tables of all women, tables. I know there are some games out there where the entire cast is, I think Death to Divinity. Essentially, they consider themselves like the all fat, all women, all POC game, which I think is wonderful. Just
Mm.
because, in terms of things that you see on screen, that's not usually it. So I think that seeing if people can look past the most popular TTRPG actual plays out there and the most popular TTRPGs, and start playing more, playing different things, inviting different people to your table, and deciding to watch something that may be out, not comfort zone exactly, but maybe it's something that you wouldn't normally add to your list on Twitch or as a podcast. I think
Hmm.
that realizing there's so much more out there than just, you know, and if somebody out there only likes watching D&D, that's fine. There are so many D&D actual plays out there,
Hmm.
tons of them.
Yes.
So, I'm not saying you have to try something that isn't D&D, but I think that, you look on Twitter, I know we're coming up to a tabletop gaming convention, so there's going to be a lot more news coming out of there of shows to keep an eye on. I
Hmm.
think that that's going to help grow this whole industry, culture, etc. We didn't really lose tabletop role playing games, but they didn't do so well for a long time in terms of something that everybody wanted to play and was popular. And it's popular now. I think that that is on us, the hobbyists, to now capitalize on that and not let that change again. And we can do
Hmm.
that by, as I said, meet people where they live and say, oh, well, you say you don't like TTRPGs, but what about this one? That's based on a magical girls. Like, you like anime, this one's based on magical girls. Why don't you play that? Or anything. I actually do want to play a magical girl TTRPG. I think it would be hilarious.
Hmm. I can think of a few, but yeah, no, as you say, they are out there. Different, as much as I don't want to say don't watch or play D&D. I definitely agree with
Right.
the if you're a games master, storyteller, MC, DM, whatever. My advice is to, if not that I ever get asked it, but my advice if people want it is to try new systems, read new systems, see how different games handle different situations, because it's all knowledge and it can all be turned around and put back into your D&D game for your table.
Exactly.
And yeah, some of the games that are there to represent and sort of respect culture, take it. People have put hard work into it.
Oh, in general, advisors, sensitivity readers, yeah, things like that.
Yeah, so it's important and good that people have sort of brought in diversity advisors, sensitivity readers, and things like that, so we can sort of utilize the things that they have refined for us, made sure that they are um, effectively safe our tables to use, and then we can convert them and take them into our D&D games, for example. It could be Pathfinder, Starfinder, whatever the tabletop role-playing game of choice is. Um,
Right.
so one thing that you've mentioned a couple of times and that has been catching my eye a lot is your blog, your food, basically. I'm not going to lie,
Oh,
your cooking looks phenomenal.
it's something that I've always loved doing. And when I moved, basically when I was in college for the first time, I think my mother gave me a book that literally is, what do I do now that mom isn't here to take care of me? And it had basic recipes in it. So I wasn't just eating, like ramen and canned
Mm,
peas every night or something like that. And I've just kind of always enjoyed doing it. And I fully confessed to becoming a foodie when the foodie sort of craze was a thing. And it really was just growing up. I was a latchkey kid. My parents both worked, and essentially they didn't have time to cook. So they weren't coming home and making gourmet meals. It was really
mm.
just kind of whatever made sense to make that was quick and easy. And I said, okay, well, that's fine, but now I live on my own. I can do what I want. There's a joke that says, once you realize that you can make bacon anytime you want, like it's just kind of a revelation. And for me, that revelation was cheesecake. Like I can make cheesecake anytime I want now, and I don't have to ask anyone's permission. But I've always enjoyed cooking and baking and trying new things. And I have as many failures as I have successes. But I wanted to focus, especially since we were all inside for the most part in the past 2 years, and all of us didn't necessarily have great access to all of the food. I just started focusing on what was easy, what was delicious and accessible, and what kind of substitutions could be made. And a while ago, a friend suggested that I do a cooking stream. So I do those every now and then. But most of the time, it's just, okay, what's in the fridge? What can I make? And then I just take a picture of it and share it online. Just it's what you do. You take pictures of what you're doing and you share it on the internet,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
people like it.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. It makes me salivate every time I see your posts go up. So thank you, and not thank you, because drooling in public is not my best look.
I don't think it's anyone's, no. Well, unless you're a dog.
And then it's socially
Then I guess that's
acceptable.
sort of, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, so, and your blog, not just for food, which the content I adore, but not just for food. You mentioned, and you sort of do things around DC, and so what's it been like? Obviously, we've been inside with COVID for a period of time, and getting back out where is safe and responsible. But what's it like learning about the environment around you in that respect?
I It's interesting. I think I've not I haven't always lived in major cities, but either in or near a major city. So for me, it's enjoying where you live, which I feel like where I live now is Washington D.C., and it would become very easy for people to become jaded about living here because we have monuments, we have museums. You see them once, and then you never visit them again unless
Mm,
somebody is visiting, and then you take them there. um, but a friend and I, we just started looking up exhibits all the time. We started looking up off the beaten path types of things. Like we have a lot of public gardens and some private gardens here.
mm,
We would go to see traveling exhibits, and a lot of that also harkening back to my food stuff is also trying a lot of different restaurants and going and eating. And I just felt like I could just get up, go to work every day, come home, order in, cook, go out to eat, and that would be my day. And then on the weekend, what's interesting is that I grew up in the suburbs, so the weekend was chore time and errand time, and you'd have
mm,
to hop in the car and go everywhere. But I no longer have that living in a city. I can walk to most of my conveniences. I can have things delivered, which just left me all of this free time. And as much as I loved playing video games, it was also just as nice to go out and see my friends, go out and have a nice brunch, sometimes go out and have a nice brunch for like 6 hours at a time. Don't judge. And it was just, it was nice to kind of lean into the fact of discovering where you live and what makes where you live fun, interesting, and exciting. And even if it's just stuff you think is cool, like it doesn't have to be what everyone thinks of in the city. It can just be this one nice coffee house that you go to, and that's where you sit and you enjoy reading or writing for a few hours.
mm,
But I don't want to miss out on that. And I think that because I work in IT. I sit at a computer essentially both to work, and I sit at a computer to relax. It can be very hard to remember to break out of that cycle and go and do something else, think about something else, look at
mm,
something else, and just kind of remember that everything around you is meant to enrich you and enrich your soul. And I like doing that by myself. I like sharing it with people. And I also I love taking pictures and writing about stuff because maybe people who live in DC don't know about an exhibit that's happening, and now they do. And it's, everything, almost everything here is free or fairly inexpensive to enjoy.
mm,
So I loved writing about that and sharing about it, or just kind of seeing a random thing. And as much as I love social media, I love Instagram. Sometimes just sharing a picture for me is not enough. Like I need to talk about what led me to that moment, or how it made me feel, or what I thought about it. And at the same point, I want to share with others, like how you can also find this cool exhibit, or go to this nice restaurant, or enjoy this pop up. So
mm,
living, essentially not just living in some place, but truly living where you are, in that, if like you live in a place for a while or you travel around a lot, being able to kind of experience it to its fullest, whatever level of that is comfortable for you,
mm,
has kind of always been something I've loved. Because it's very easy to become a homebody, especially nowadays. Like it's very easy to just say, nope, never going outside again.
mm,
And, I feel like now that it feels a little more comfortable to go out and a little safer to go out, we I want to go out and see things and do
mm,
things again, even if they're just blocks away from my house.
mm. That's sort of the difference between existing and living, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. And so, taking on all these experiences, and finding things local and getting to know somewhere uh, inside and out might be pushing it, but to a greater depth and understanding your surroundings. On your blog, you also have advice for first-time DMs. Do you use experiences that you've had from your local area, and do you bring that into your sort of world building if you do any?
I do take ideas, and I have an entire document of story ideas that I have started, and I don't know if I plan to make use of them myself, or if I plan to pass them on to somebody else to say, here are some story hooks. But I have taken some of my experiences, but a lot of stuff. When I co-DM'd Rivals of Waterdeep, a lot of stuff was pre-written. Like I would sit and think, okay, well, here's our major story. Here's the elements that we want to make sure we hit. And then in between the episodes, we would then refine that to based on what they did in the previous episode.
Mm.
Because the saying goes is that no plan survives contact with your players.
Very true.
And
Very true.
for the most part, we were able to tell the story we wanted to tell. But yeah, they would divert. They would find interest in some tiny facet. So we did end up writing a lot of it on the fly, and I feel like we mostly wanted to incorporate like a big cinematic story in our season.
Mm.
And some elements, essentially, you're always drawing elements of things. I always feel like I draw parallels to more movies.
Okay.
I tend to think of more movies when I think about telling a story for either as a GM or as a player.
Mm.
I'll pull in a lot of that. So no, I didn't put a lot of local flavor yet into my GMing yet. Although I have thought about people who do homebrew stuff for cities, and a lot of them do homebrew stuff that takes place in quote unquote any city, and then you sort of add your elements to it. So that might be fun to try sometime.
Hmm. Definitely. And you do, your blog does have that first time DM advice. So off the cuff almost, do you have that sort of that banker for that sort of response when someone says, have you got any tips for a first time GM or DM?
As cliche as it is, don't panic and trust that your players want to be a part of the awesome story that you want to tell. So you shouldn't be an antagonist to your players, even if one of your characters might be. But you should make sure that you remember that as the DM, you're also a player at the table too. You may be in charge of the story, but you shouldn't stress out so much on making sure that the experience is great for them that you forget to have fun yourself.
I think that's very fair, very valid. So thank you. Thank you. It's always nice to get a new DM's perspective on being a new DM. Because often,
yeah, my other advice to that is don't do it. It's horrible. It's terrifying. You're sweat. Yeah, let me be honest about it. Okay.
That's fine.
I was sweating bullets 5 seconds before we went live that first time, and I got used to it, and I got into it. But yeah, I was still nervous every single time.
I think the adrenaline helps. But yeah, no, it can be unnerving, I guess, as an experience. But hopefully, as they did with yours, the players and the table feels cohesive, and you get to relax.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned you work in IT, then you come home and your computer is your space to relax. So what is it you're playing at the moment? What is coming up in the future that you're excited to play and stream for those that can come and follow you on Twitch?
It's interesting. I'm not great at looking ahead to new games, but I've played Destiny by Bungie forever, and I always look forward to. There's going to be a bunch of new content in February, so I look forward to playing through that. I want to look at the new Gotham Knights game that has come out. I do love some comic books, and I love that the way that they've adapted the Batman family to video games. So I want to try that. Recently, I played Ghostbusters, which definitely had that good nostalgia to it, and that was a lot of fun. But I love looking at independent titles that are, maybe by smaller studios and lesser known, but they end up being really captivating games. So I'm always on the lookout for something new. There's nothing that's currently on my watch list.
Okay.
I suspect that my streams right now are a lot of my comfort games because of the other projects that I'm involved in during the week. I don't always have time to look out for new games.
That's fair. So what are your comfort games? What's your go-to if you're like, I just want to relax, I want to enjoy it, maybe chat with chat. That makes sense. And just sit and just almost be at one with myself, with the game and with the community, your community.
It is, oddly enough, because people have commented on the different kind of chill vibe. It is a first person shooter. It's going to be like Destiny 2 because I played it backwards and forwards. I know the lore inside and out. Or it's going to be something. I've also played Tom Clancy's The Division 2, which again is, it's a shooter, so you don't really assign it with like, oh, this is just something I play to relax. But because I played so much of it, your hands are almost moving on autopilot, and you can then focus and say, okay, well, let's talk. Let me tell you about my day. Let me see what's going on in chat, because there's also no stakes. They're still mostly single player games. So if I get shot while doing a mission, I can just restart and it's fine. I don't worry about it. Versus if I were playing something that was competitive with other people, I would feel like I needed to focus more on the game. But those, I just love to sit back and play. And also, I got very heavily into Animal Crossing during the pandemic. So that is something that on a Sunday morning, I will start up Animal Crossing. I will turn the stream on, and you just run around a virtual island and do stuff. And it's a perfect background to just chat with people.
Yeah, definitely. And we have spoken at length about many things. We've mentioned, sort of introduction and growth through tabletop role-playing games, Rivals of Waterdeep, your streaming, your comic book interest we've touched on there and things like that. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned so far in this interview that you would like to bring up now?
I don't think so. I feel like we have really gone over a lot. It's been a wonderful conversation. I don't think so, no.
All right. Well, that is fair enough. So if someone wants to come and join your sort of 9,000 subscribers on Twitch, 1,000 followers on Instagram, or approaching 10,000 followers on Twitter, where can they find you on social media? What are your handles, and where can we scroll down and follow you, as it were?
The easiest way, I think, is to search Urban Bohemian on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. And also urbanbohemian.com is my blog that also has a contact page, which I listed like a link tree. I've listed all of my social media handles there. However, I always say that Twitter is the best place for now to keep up with what's going on with me. And if not, to catch me on Twitch.
All right. Well, I will make sure all those links are in the description below. So please scroll down, support those links, follow the podcast that Brian has mentioned earlier. Again, links to those will be in the description below, and support this incredible content creator. Brian, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, to getting to know you and your involvement with the tabletop role-playing game community.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun today.
It has. And I'd love to get you back on in the future, say after your downtime, should we call it, in over the winter, get you back on the show in the future, see how things are developing, new projects and all that sort of stuff in the future, if you'd be willing.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yes.
Perfect. Well, we will get that sorted at a future date. Thank you so much for joining me, Brian. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the show, then go to www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com. Alternatively, you can find us over on Twitter @ReturnSnyder. We have a Linktree link in the description of this episode. And if you want to support us, come and join us over on Patreon. And we also have a Discord server. Please leave us a review, because we'd love to learn how to improve the channel and provide better content out for those who are listening. Until we speak again, thank you.